Canton, Massachusetts is a small town where it seems everyone knows each other. There's a small, classic downtown area featuring places to eat, shop, places to socialize. And on Friday, January 28th, 2022, some of the locals were gathering at two of the local bars, C.F. McCarthy's and across the street at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. Boston Police Officer John O'Keefe met some buddies at C.F. McCarthy's early in the evening and then was joined by his girlfriend Karen Reed. Then they went across the street to the Waterfall to see some more friends, including John's old neighbors, Chris and Julie Albert. Chris owns the local downtown pizzeria and had been texting with John. When midnight arrived, the Waterfall was closing, so a group of folks from the Waterfall headed to Chris's brother's house, Brian Albert. But Chris and Julie did not go. When Karen and John arrived in front of Brian Albert's home, John exited Karen's SUV. At this point, what happens next is not clear. Prosecutors say John was murdered by Karen, who backed over him, while the defense says he was ambushed inside the Alberts home and put on the lawn to die in the cold and to frame Karen. Karen is now on trial for murder, and today the jury heard the critical cross-examination of the homeowner, Brian Albert. Questions about his phone, a double butt dial, and the back exit to the basement leading to the backyard. Tonight, we examine the testimony, the body language, and the cross-examination as we continue to investigate the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Another big day in Dedham, Massachusetts, in the case of Karen Reed. I want to start tonight talking about DNA. When DNA first burst onto the scene in criminal prosecutions, it was an absolute game changer. Game changer for prosecutors, investigators, also a game changer for some who had been wrongfully convicted before DNA was part of what we see in trials today. It was a big game changer. I mean, it drastically changed a lot of the way we look at crime scenes, expectations of jurors, and some certainty into whether or not someone was at a crime scene. But not every case, not every trial is a DNA case. There is some in the Karen Reed trial that prosecutors want to use, no doubt. But in some cases, it doesn't necessarily apply, or sometimes it's a little ambiguous. When cell phones became ordinary and used by everyone, that, I believe, became a bigger game changer. What are we seeing in every trial we cover now? What are we seeing? We're seeing this digital evidence, this digital footprint that is placed. I mean, so much can be done from cell phone evidence. You're talking about placement, movement. You are talking about searches that are done, you know, getting inside the mind of a suspect or a witness. We're talking about communications, text messages, telephone calls, taking a look at cell phone towers and figuring out what phones were in the area at the time of the crime. I think it's done much, much more than DNA ever did. DNA, huge. Cell phones, even bigger, because they apply, I would say, in 99 out of 100 cases in some form, some manner, in proving a case one way or the other. And in this case, expect cell phones to be a huge part of all of this. Now, the one thing we know about this case is that someone is wrong. Prosecution and defense. Someone is wrong. They each have theories on what happened to John O'Keefe, and someone is wrong. Some may argue both could be wrong because they're both claiming some level of murder, intentional conduct, taking the life of John O'Keefe. There's still a possibility that it was an accident, but neither side is saying that. But someone is going to be wrong here. Someone is going to be wrong. So the prosecution has looked at evidence like the taillight, DNA on the taillight, a confession, alleged confession made by Karen Reed, all very strong evidence in most cases, and could be what makes the difference here in this case. But the defense, as we know, is saying it's a cover-up, it's planted evidence, etc. So, but what does the defense have? Where is their piece of evidence here that is going to be compelling? Well, we may have seen one today that they will argue about, the so-called smoking butt dial, or butt dials in this case, where there's communication in the early morning hours in 222 between two people who were at the after party, two people after the fact. Everyone's gone. Why are they communicating? That's what the defense is saying here, that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, the owner of the home, Brian Higgins, his buddy, who was there that night, who was also at the waterfall, doing the shadow boxing, etc. They say this is a huge piece of evidence, and it was a big part of the cross-examination of Brian Albert today. And we're going to talk a lot about it. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, who is joining us tonight live from outside that courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. Matt, great to see you. Let's talk about this cross-examination, because that's how the day began. It was the main event. It was super significant, probably the first really big moments for the defense in trying to establish their case.
Hey, Vinny, nice to see you. Week 3 out the gate in the killer cover-up murder trial playing out in this small town outside of Boston, and what a big witness for the prosecution back on the stand for the cross-examination. And you know what? They pointed out that he is a professional witness. He's been a Boston police officer, now retired, for 30 years. Sure, he wasn't friends with O'Keefe, but he knew him quite well through word of mouth. Now, he was questioned about a lot of things, including relationships. And you brought up Brian Higgins, the ATF agent. He was questioned about relationships. They were at the Waterfall Bar. They were shadow boxing. Defense wants this jury to think that maybe that spilled over into the after party at the house. Well, he was also asked about things that he got rid of, including his cell phone, which he was required to preserve according to court order, getting rid of the dog Chloe that the family owned for 7 years, and also selling that family home.
The fact is, you listed that house for sale for the first time ever in November of 2022, correct?
That's the time we listed it, yes.
Just months after John O'Keefe was found on your lawn.
Objection.
Sustained.
Mr. Albert, is that timing, according to you, a coincidence?
Is what?
Is that timing a coincidence?
Well, that's not the timing, actually. We contacted the realtor in 2021, finally listed it in 2022. So that would be pre-incident.
Then there was a moment where the mood in the courtroom changed when, according to the prosecution story, again, he never made it into the house, but he was asked about that. Did you ever see John O'Keefe, Officer O'Keefe, inside your home? He said no, but he wished he had.
John O'Keefe ever come into your house that night?
John never came into my house that night. He would have been welcomed, and the defendant would have been welcomed with open arms had they come in, and I wish they had.
And of course, the defense saying that he did make it into that home, but we haven't really heard their case yet.
It was such an important moment for the defense and what they were trying to extract from this witness, keeping him on the stand. We'll see, you know, if the jury believes him, if the jury believes that there's something wrong with his testimony, or if they're just buying it. We shall see. So he testifies, and then his son also testifies, Brian Albert Jr.
Yeah, so Brian Albert Jr. was an important witness for what he saw. Now, he was the one that was celebrating his birthday. People were visiting 34 Fairview and going to the other places because they were celebrating. He was going to turn, I think it was 24 at the time, 22. And so he had friends over at the house. He notes when everybody leaves. And then he also told this jury that he saw something that is very important outside the house. Take a listen.
Yeah, so the first time I looked, I would say it was closer towards the mailbox, maybe a little bit in front of the mailbox. And then the second time, the last time I looked out the window, it had moved further down, closer to I'll say the flagpole, so closer that way. It went down that way, towards the flagpole.
So, Vinny, this is the first time that this jury that's in the box here, listening to all the evidence, hears that there is another car, a black SUV, out in front of the house, and then it changes spots. First time hearing that bit of evidence. And also, we have to keep in mind that these are lay witnesses, right? You know, not like his dad, who's a professional witness. I noticed him in the halls of the courthouse today after he walked down those marble stairs from that courtroom, and he was taking a few deep breaths.
That's significant for prosecutors because you've got to get Karen Reed and John O'Keefe near where he is found to prove your case that that's where he was run over. So this witness does that for the prosecution, takes it from the spot where you would normally drop someone off, right? You would normally drop someone off in front of a house with snow, not in front of the lawn. You would drop them off by the driveway, which makes more sense. And now all of a sudden, you've put him down closer to where he's found. Okay, so Brian Jr. testified, his dad testified, and then I guess it's Brian Jr.'s sister, Caitlin, who was also the daughter of Brian Sr., took the stand today.
Yeah. She was really important witness because she also saw everyone just having a good time throughout the night. She was also at those bars from time to time. She goes to the house. She's no longer living there. The brother still is. She's the last to leave. She testifies to that. And she also is important because we're going to hear more about possibly her relationship with firefighter Katie McLaughlin and whether or not they were actual acquaintances or better friends, because the prosecutors want to bring, or the defense rather wants to bring in those social media pictures. Well, she was really testifying to some important things today about the demeanor of the group today, and here's what she shared.
How would you describe sort of the mood or the demeanor of the group that you were with?
I mean, I didn't notice any issues or any negative things happening. All the conversation seemed positive, lighthearted. Everyone was just kind of having a good time, getting along. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary.
So again, Vinny, the defense really wants to impeach her acquaintance or friend, Katie McLaughlin, because that's the first one of the firefighters to say she heard, I hit him, and they want to impeach her testimony from prior, saying that she's not a reliable witness. So we'll learn tomorrow morning before Caitlin takes the stand if the photos will be admitted and to be shown to the jury.
All right, looking forward to that moment as well. Matt Johnson in the middle of it all in Dedham, Massachusetts. Another big day. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right, I'm bringing a special guest, body language expert, author of the New York Times bestselling book, You Can't Lie to Me, and creator of the new free, like you don't pay for it, newsletter, In the Driver's Seat. Janine Driver is with us. Janine, thanks so much for joining us. This witness is extremely important, Brian Albert. He's the homeowner. And what I want to do is play a piece of his testimony because if the jury believes him, it's going to be really difficult, I think, for the defense to try to sell what they believe happened here to this jury. But if they don't believe him, I think that's a huge problem for the prosecution. So I want you to tell us what you notice about his testimony, if there's anything about it that strikes you that is of interest. You ready?
Yes, ready.
Okay, here he is, Brian Albert, and then Janine on the other side of this will explain what, if anything, she notices from his testimony.
So your testimony is that you get in bed after being on a road trip all day long, then at restaurants, and at bars, then at a get-together at your house. And when you go to bed, you don't charge your phone?
No. I had the phone in the bed with me.
Why would you have the phone in bed?
We have 5 kids, and if somebody was trying to call or if I needed to reach them, it's just kind of a habit I do. I put my reading glasses and my phone in bed with me.
Sir, did you make any phone calls after you went to bed between the hours of 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m.?
Yes.
Who did you call?
I inadvertently called Brian Higgins.
What time?
I don't recall the exact time. After 2.
2:22 and 35 seconds. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Did you speak to Brian Higgins at any point between 1:45 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. that night?
No.
You say you inadvertently called him at 2:22 in the morning.
Yes.
How did you inadvertently call him?
Well, I don't know because it was inadvertent.
So I have to explain that.
Well, it's kind of like a butt dial.
So according to your phone records, you placed a call to him, and then 17 seconds later, he returned a call to you that lasted 22 seconds. Correct?
That's what the records reflect, yes.
When you woke up in the morning, you obviously checked your phone. Did you not?
I don't know if I did.
Are you telling this jury that the call that came into your phone was a missed call, or did you answer it?
I did not answer it.
So it would have been a missed call.
I just know I didn't answer the call.
So it would have been a missed call.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that to be a fact. I just know I didn't answer the phone call.
Okay.
I missed the call, yes.
Okay, Janine, he's a police officer, so he's testified before. I mean, like more than 100 times, he said. So what are your thoughts? What are you seeing? What are you noticing?
It goes to show you just because you're a lawyer, Vinny, or you're in law enforcement, doesn't mean you can get ahead of the body language. So we see this tightening of his cheeks and his lips happening. This is a spike in stress and anxiety. We often see people doing this when lying. Now let's play devil's advocate. We also see it in people who are worried about being believed. So we could have both sides here. However, it's every time we're talking about these phone calls. To me, Vinny, and you at home, this is Jodi Arias taking out the camera cord, the camera memory stick, throwing the camera in the washing machine and thinking she's in the free. I think this is the smoking gun of this case because this A is loaded with deception. B, we see numerous hotspots happening here, high stress, a little bit of contempt, but this smirking this thing that's happening with his face, you know who did that, Vinny? The Menendez brothers. So when the Menendez brothers were, it's involuntary. He can't control it. Doesn't matter that he was famous on a TV show about cops. It doesn't matter. So he is leaking massive signs of potential deception here. And I want to go back a little bit with Brian Albert in the clip from earlier. He talked about regarding selling the house. The question was, you know, isn't it weird timing that this happened right after John gets killed? And he says the words pre-incident. No, I called a realtor the year before or a couple of years before this pre-incident. No cop, I'm telling you right now, ask all the cops, take a survey over on Court TV. No cop calls another cop who is, you're saying this cop was murdered by Karen Reed and you're calling it a pre-incident? No, you would say killed, found dead. Pre-incident is minimizing language. And know who uses minimizing language? Cops, to get you to tell us the truth. We don't say, did you rape her? We say, did you force yourself on her to lessen the crime? And people who are lying, you know who else? Not Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp said exactly what we hear from Amber Heard. I did not hit her, abuse her, whatever it was. But Amber Heard, minimizing language. We see this with liars. I think this is the smoking gun. I think this is Jodi Arias thinking she took all the evidence away because she took the memory card out when she killed Travis Alexander. This is a smoking gun. If I was a betting woman, which I'm not, I would bet 100, all my cards, all my money, Karen Reed is innocent. She did not do it.
Let me ask you this. Is it possible that you could have the same sort of tics or expressions or body language if people have been pointing the finger at you and accusing you, and you know the whole world knows about these accusations, and now you're on the stand facing questioning?
Yeah, maybe. If you have no self-esteem, maybe if you are nervous because you've been in and out of jail, you've been arrested 10 times, so you don't think people are going to believe you. But a cop who is confident, who has an ego because he's on all these TV shows, he made a huge difference in Boston. This is a cop that solved a lot of crimes. So you're telling me all of a sudden he's nervous about being believed? Here's the deal. We don't have to worry about being believed. You just simply tell the truth. You tell the truth. The only people that worry about being believed, Vinny, and you at home, are the people who are lying to us. So to your point, if in fact this is because he's worrying about being believed, another linchpin in the whole entire thing, why I think it's a government cover-up in the state of Massachusetts.
Janine Driver, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Great to see you.
Love you.
All right. When we come back, folks, we're going to take a look at the evidence. We're going to talk about the phone calls, the phone evidence, plus coming up next hour. Chad Daybell is a former grave digger who began writing books about his near-death experiences. His self-published books began to gain some popularity. Then he started to get a following at prepper conventions, hanging out with people who were preparing for the end of times. And with this new following, Chad started to get the attention of some women, including a woman named Lori Vallow. They began an extramarital affair and then got married after their respective spouses both died and Lori's children disappeared. Tonight, we'll take a closer look at Tylee Ryan, one of Lori's children, and her relationship with her brother JJ and her killer mom.
Do you remember approximately when Tylee moved to Idaho?
That must have been, I want to say sometime in September of 2019, end of the summer.
Did you stay in contact with Tylee after she moved to Idaho?
Tried to for the 2 weeks that I had.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The Killer or Cover-Up Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
Mr. Lally said that the defense had filed a motion to ask for the phones to be preserved.
And anything else?
That's what I remember him saying.
Did you volunteer that, oh my goodness, I just upgraded my phone last week conveniently. I don't have that phone anymore.
No.
You didn't say that to Mr. Lally?
No.
You just took the information that he gave you and hung up the phone and went about your business.
Yes.
Without notifying him that the very phone that he had just ordered you to preserve had just been destroyed days earlier.
No, the phone wasn't destroyed. I upgraded the phone.
Okay, let me lay the groundwork here. So the prosecutor calls up Brian Albert, and says, listen, don't do anything with your phones. There's a motion, there's an order from the judge saying you got to preserve everything that's on your phone. But apparently he had just upgraded his phone. So what impact does all that have? Does he know that it has impact? We'll take a listen to more of this cross-examination about the data in his phone versus the data in his phone after the upgrade.
How long have you had a phone? That's an iPhone.
Years.
How many times have you upgraded your iPhone?
Multiple times.
Every single time you upgraded. You know that the phone prior, the data's destroyed on it, correct?
Usually my contacts come over and my photos come over. So
that's a backup.
no, I don't think I have that on backup, but okay.
Irrespective, you didn't tell Mr. Lally that you had gotten rid of that phone.
I was not asked that, and I didn't tell him that.
I see. You felt like if you weren't asked that, you didn't need to volunteer it, even though the conference call was specifically about preserving your phone pursuant to a judge's order. Correct?
What was the question?
You didn't offer to Mr. Lally that you had gotten rid of the very phone that he was telling you had to be preserved due to a judge's order.
I did not.
So is this a big deal? Is it not? Let's bring in our guest. Joining me, Karen Reed supporter and Karen Reed expert, Nick Rocco. Criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., who at one time represented Colin Albert, does not anymore. And the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan, is with us as well. Nick, I'll begin with you. Is this a big deal for the defense? Is this a big deal for Karen Reed? If so, why?
Well, I believe it's a big deal because today on stand, Brian Albert has been inconsistent until, what Alan Jackson mentions, this other hearing. That is the federal grand jury that the defense is referring to. They just cannot speak about that in open court in front of the jury. So Brian Albert doesn't remember receiving this on the 23rd and the 24th of the preservation order until Alan Jackson and Greg Henning, which is Albert's attorney, came to the stipulation out in the hallway that it in fact was received on that day. And when confronted with that, then all of a sudden it turned into, well, yeah, I upgraded it on the 22nd, which was hours before receiving this preservation order. And like he told the feds as well, oh, it's a coincidence. This getting rid of the phone, and then Brian Higgins also admitting to the feds that he got rid of his phone, and they had conversations about getting rid of the phone. I mean, it's a smoking gun. There's no reason why he would get rid of it the day before. And then to bring up his birthday on September 4th, which, what, you waited another 18 days to get a phone after your birthday? Usually you get birthday gifts, from people. So I didn't understand that whole logic of his birthday bringing that up. But
Kevin, do you think it's a big deal?
Look, I listened to Janine, the body language expert, and I think she does a very good job of highlighting signs of anxiety, and those could be indications of someone not being quite forthcoming. However, what she doesn't do, and what Nick is not doing, what nobody seems to do on the whole side of this case, is ask what else could be causing someone to fudge testimony.
I asked.
Anything?
To fudge testimony. I asked what else would throw the body language off. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, you did. You made a great point. But what I'm saying is there are other things on someone's phone that they may not want to be made public. And this is why this could never be a smoking gun, even if they proved that Brian deliberately destroyed all the data in his phone, because we don't know what he was destroying and why. And that's why you have to look at all of the other evidence in the case.
All right. Joseph Krasky Jr., let me ask you, these phone records, he upgrades the phone records disappear. This is nothing that you could get from the phone company? And if not, do you think this is a problem for the prosecution? Because you've got a witness who, all of a sudden, the phone that I had, I don't have the same one. We lost some of the records here.
Well, I think it's a problem for the prosecution anytime you're spending a half hour talking about butt dialing instead of a cracked taillight and a confession from the defendant. I certainly think that Adam Lally has to reclaim the narrative a little bit here. But it's not a smoking gun. It's what we call legally evidence of absence, or proof of a negative. There is no substantive evidence that Hollywood Jackson is putting forward. Anyone that does this type of work knows that it's the company that stores all of the applicable data, the call logs, the text data, even some of the photos are backed up. And I would think that if a detective was going to be involved in a cover-up, he probably wouldn't have used his phone anyway. But I also think there's a little lack of cultural geographical awareness from, Alan Jackson here. Look, this is Boston. We go out, we have a few beers, we horseplay with our friends. I think I'm in a chokehold every other week. We go home and we fall asleep with our phone in our bed, and we end up yelling at our kids for taking our charger. He strikes me as the type that goes to bed with the silk pajamas, phone on the charger, blindfold on. This is Boston. It's not the way we do it. Not a smoking gun. It's not sniff evidence of anything. It's just it's impeachment, and maybe the optics aren't bad, and maybe there's some bumps and bruises, but there's no content they have. So it's no substantive evidence.
Let's take a listen to more of the cross-examination here. Again, this is important.
Did you and Brian Higgins agree with each other that you were both going to get rid of your phones?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
No.
You testified at the other hearing in June of 2022, quote, I don't recall saying that I was going to get rid of my personal phone to Brian Higgins. I may have said that. There's personal stuff on my personal phone, but I don't recall saying that to him, but I don't know. We had multiple conversations about things, end quote. You remember testifying to that?
Yes.
So you're not ruling out the fact that you may have told Brian Higgins that you intended to get rid of your phone, correct?
No.
You're not ruling out the fact that Brian Higgins may have told you that he intended to get rid of his phone?
No, I don't remember him saying that to me.
You're aware that Brian Higgins has also gotten rid of his phone, correct?
I am not aware of that until after the time you're talking about.
So, without qualifying your answer, answer my question. As you sit here, you're aware that Brian Higgins has also gotten rid of his phone.
I know at some point, Brian Higgins.
Yes or no, Mr. Albert?
Did he?
Objection, Your Honor.
Can you answer that, yes or no, sir?
Yes.
All right, Nick, a lot of time was spent, you know, connecting Brian Higgins and Brian Albert, but there was also a lot of time spent separately talking about Colin Albert and Brian Albert covering up for Colin. Is there any connection between Brian Higgins and Colin Albert? Like, I'm trying to understand where the defense is going with this, or if this is classic spaghetti defense where you throw stuff up and see what sticks. Is there a connection between all three of these guys? Because that seems to be what the defense is kind of alluding to through their cross-examination.
Well, I don't see that they're trying to necessarily make a connection between Brian Higgins and Colin. I think today a lot of the focus was those phone calls that Higgins and Albert were doing, you know, the butt dials of, you know, how did you unlock your cell phone if you're laying in bed supposedly sleeping at that time, or if you weren't sleeping and you made that phone call by mistake, how did you miss that call 17 seconds later from Brian Higgins? And he said in the federal grand jury testimony that, you know, it couldn't have been his wife, it couldn't have been his dog, so if it was answered, it had to have been him. But he also doesn't have a voicemail and he doesn't have a missed call. So somebody picked up that phone, and another coincidence, Jen McCabe Google search at 2:27, 5 minutes later after those butt dials occurred. But as far as the connection between Higgins and Colin Albert, I didn't see much of that today. And I was in the courtroom. I will say that you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom today. Everybody was pretty laser focused. And one of the big things that when he said you know, he upgraded his phone, he didn't destroy his phone, he upgraded it on September 22nd. The jury was not happy with that answer. I can say by the looks of it.
Well, let me do this. Let me just take a quick survey by raising your hand. Who here, before they go to bed at night, plugs their phone into the charger and puts it on the nightstand next to them?
Sometimes.
Sometimes you just throw it in the middle of the bed. And I know Joseph doesn't for sure. He comes home, whatever, we'll get it in the morning. Gotcha. All right, stay where you are, guys. We got a lot more to get to. And we're going to talk about some of the video that we saw today and this whole trip into the basement of Brian Albert's home.
What was the basement used for in January of 2022?
So the basement had a weight room in one of the rooms, and the other room was nothing at the time. It had been damaged, water damage due to an overflowed toilet.
So part of the flooring had been ripped up.
Yes.
And that opened up some slab concrete downstairs.
Yes.
So through the cross-examination of Brian Albert today, Alan Jackson, through his cross-examination, took us on a tour of Brian Albert's basement. Let's take a listen to some more things that were extracted through this cross.
If you wanted to move something large or heavy out of that basement without having to go through the main house, could you do that?
Yes, I mean, it would depend what it was, obviously, how big it was. Or
How would you do that?
there's a bulkhead door you can use.
Got it. Where does that bulkhead door come out of?
It comes out to the backyard right at the kitchen area. You can see it from the kitchen.
And right to the left of that is the side fence.
Yes.
And directly through that side fence is the front yard.
Yes.
The same side of the front yard as John O'Keefe's body was found.
Yes.
And more of that tour as we take a look at the video that was shot here. Let's take a look. This is the bulkhead door in the back. And then from that bulkhead door that goes from the basement, you walk into the backyard, you make a quick left, and now you're going to open up the fence, and let's see where that leads to. that leads to the front yard. And you can see the flagpole on the right. So it's very close if you walk from there. If you walk straight out, it would take you very close to the area where John O'Keefe's body was found. The obvious implication here from the defense is that if you're going to kill John O'Keefe in the basement on that concrete floor, you're going to take him out through the back, and the natural place where he would end up is in that part of the yard. Let's bring back in our guests, Nick Rocco, Joseph Krasky Jr., Kevin Lenahan. Kevin, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, Alan Jackson made a pretty big blunder there that must have really upset Nick. I don't think Nick would have made that blunder. He allowed it to be entered in, the fact that the basement, that one room, had been flooded several times, which his testimony is going to show, and the damage was already there, and that's why it had to be replaced. But another thing just to keep in mind, they keep trying to put Colin down there, and the idea that these guys ambushed Colin. But this came through in Caitlin's testimony today. So Caitlin is drinking with them at the waterfall. If the plan is to ambush this John, bring this guy that you work with back to the house and ambush him, why do you invite your daughter there? Why don't you make sure your daughter doesn't show up? Your daughter goes home. She doesn't live there. I mean, it's just another one of the crazier aspects of this conspiracy theory.
What we're looking at now, this is from the basement inside. The door is open. You can see where that latch door is and those stairs going out. Joseph, your thoughts about all of this cross-examination? Is it starting to set the table for what the defense is going to argue really, from their perspective, happened here?
Depends what they're allowed to argue, right? I thought that Judge Cannoni had made a pretrial ruling, but it seems like with the dispensation of the court, they are allowed to embed theories into their line of questioning. Look, I'll give credit where credit's due. He's doing his job. The lawyers are doing their job. I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of the lawyers in this case. If I was Lally, I'd probably get off my hands and object to some of the line of questioning because, again, who is the witness that's going to say Colin Albert went to that basement? Who is the witness that's going to say anyone went down to that basement? Who is the witness that's going to say that individuals dragged John O'Keefe from the bulkhead to the front yard? Now we have, and as more time goes on, look, I know Lally's taken a lot of criticism, and I've been critical of him. Maybe there's a method to the madness by putting all of these witnesses on. Because now you're going to have to believe Brian Albert Jr., that seems like a terrific young man, Julie Nagel and her friend, who are all there, all of the other individuals there, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert's wife, all of these people are in on it. All of these people are lying about this massive, violent, traumatic event taking place at the house. And again, motive isn't a required element, but Colin Albert's alleged motive, which fizzled, was that his 9-year-old brother, Dylan, 4 years earlier, had run across John O'Keefe's lawn on a prior occasion. So they're getting away with it, and they should keep doing it. But at some point, you know, Nick talked about the jury looking angry. I've learned you don't really know collectively what a jury is thinking. Sometimes their verdicts surprise you. I think the jury at some point is going to start wanting the defense to deliver, to actually come up with a witness that actually saw something instead of all of the innuendo and inferences to be drawn from the impeachment that they're doing.
All right, Nick, put the pieces together from Karen Reed and the defense's perspective here. What does all this mean? How does this add up for the defense theory here?
Well, one thing that Adam Lally was saying to Brian Albert on stand was that the bulkhead door opened up, you know, as Alan said, like a sandwich. So it would have blocked the bay window in the kitchen. It was very loud and made metal noise. But the thing is they didn't do that, and probably till like 3 a.m. We know John's body was not on the lawn due to the plow driver who testified with the feds, also the state police and the defense. He was not on the lawn when he first drove down the street around 1 a.m. And then you have Ryan Nagel's what he's going to testify, which was in his interview, was that when he drove by Karen Reed, John O'Keefe was not in that vehicle with her. She was the only one in that vehicle, and there was nobody outside. Nobody was on the lawn. Brian Albert Jr. said today he saw tire tracks, so he had a good, clear vision of that street. He was able to see Karen Reed's vehicle, and there was nobody on the lawn. So now we fast forward to, say, 3 a.m. when that Ford Edge is parked exactly where John's body was found 3 hours later. Why was that vehicle there? Because it blocks the fence. It blocks if anybody's walking out of that backyard, it's gonna create a little bit of a shield. Now, as far as, Colin being in the house, this and that, there's a picture out there from February 26th at a nightclub. Joe, I know you told me it was 6 weeks after the incident, but I went back and I looked. It's less than a month after the incident. His knuckles are all cut up. Now, if anybody has been in a fight before, knuckles don't heal fast. You bend your knuckles constantly. Those scabs take a long time to heal. Now, will that get put into evidence? I'm not 100% sure because I don't know if you can prove that it was from that night. But there's another coincidence for you.
Go ahead, Joe.
So Nick's a pathologist now, too. Look, that
Common
picture,
sense.
believe me, if Yannetti and Alan Jackson thought that picture was a viable piece of evidence, they would have been screaming about it from the rooftops. There are multiple pictures between the time that picture was taken. And again, Nick has no experience in the forensics of this. Those are fresh cuts, and they're not from a fight. There's not a witness that's ever come forward that's put Colin Albert in close proximity to John O'Keefe. And I did represent Colin Albert. You know what I charged him? 0. Because when I heard his plight and heard his story, I did something different than I've been doing for 24 years. Instead of representing a defendant, I took on his cause. Because what's been done, the trashing and defamation he's been taking is terrible. If you press Nick right now to who the witness they're going to produce, it's going to have Colin Albert fighting John O'Keefe. It's not going to be able to answer you.
Well, let's give him a moment. We only like 10 seconds left here. Go ahead, Nick. I'll give you the final word here.
Well, as far as charging Colin Albert $0 to represent him, I hope that wouldn't have to do with the fact of family connections that you may have to this family. So as far as, who put Colin in the house, we know he was in the house. Everybody wants to say he's at the door. Put it this way. The defense is going to prove it. The prosecution has not proved Karen Reed did this, and it's not the defense's job to prove who killed John, but to show that it was not my client. And that's what's going to happen.
All right. Kevin, I'll give you 5 seconds because I really have to go.
The defense has made a mount efforts by saying that this was a frame job. Why, if they framed these people, did they let Julie Nagel stay there instead of go home?
Great job, everybody. We're out of time. We'll do it again tomorrow.